In this episode, I'm sharing how to organize your home by avoiding 5 common home organizing mistakes. And this is the most important part, what to do instead. Did you know I own a home organizing business? Well, I've helped hundreds of super busy moms like you on this podcast with my quick and simple how to breakdowns. I can also help you on a more intimate level through my online course, Home Organizing for Beginners. Or it's also for you when you simply need a fresh start. The course is only $97 at this time, and it keeps you in mind by keeping everything short and to the point. There's no fluff, there's no fillers just to make the course longer and seem more valuable. Instead, you learn what you need to know, the steps to implement it, and you have me by your side every step of the way. So I can answer questions. You have a community of other women working on the same thing as you. So break free from what society has been telling you to do to get your home organized. Join Home Organizing for Beginners so you can finally get started, get organized, and ultimately stay organized. I will drop the link in the show notes for you to check it out today. So, we are going to dive into the mistakes right now. There are 5 of them I want to go through with you and what you can do instead. These mistakes do go in the order of the least problematic to the most problematic. So, the 5th mistake is really truly the game changer. So, stick around for that one. Mistake number 1. You do it all yourself. I know it seems like tackling a home organizing project by yourself might feel easier because, well, we don't have to worry about somebody else. We don't have to coordinate our time. We don't have to call somebody in who's just going to be like, well, why are you doing this anyhow? Right? So it seems easier to do things by ourselves. However, when you do it by yourself, you aren't getting the buy-in from the people who use the space. So if it's a space that only you use, like your closet, like you have your stuff all of your own or your makeup case or whatever, by all means, organize that by yourself. But the problem areas more often are the areas that we share with other people. So you definitely want to get their buy-in. You want to give them the opportunity to give input, and you want to learn how they use the space. So as we get into more mistakes, you'll understand why doing this by yourself really is not the way you want to do it. Instead, be sure to include those that use the space. They don't have to be present for the duration of the process, but they certainly can be. Work together to find what works best for all. Mistake number 2, you plan out a large home organizing project. When I was still working, back when the kids were little, I always felt like in order to really be productive, I'd need to take a day or 2 off of work, plan it like on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, so that I could tackle this massive home organizing project. Maybe even get all of the common or shared spaces in my home organized at once because that would feel good. It would feel so good going back to work with the entire home organized, right? But in reality, what happens? You roll up your sleeves, you dig into this massive project, you got all of this excitement and you're just so positive about it, but then you hit a wall. You have a challenge. You don't know what to do with some items. You reach decision fatigue where you've made so many decisions you're just exhausted. And honestly, sometimes for me, by the time I hit noon, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm at noon on the first day and I'm already exhausted." To the point where I go sit down on the couch, turn Netflix on. More than likely, I'm doing the thing by myself, so nobody else is in the house. I can watch whatever I want, and before I know it, the end of the day has come. Everybody else has come home. I really hadn't made any progress. And really, ultimately, the house seems like a big mess, much worse than when I started. So, what can you do instead? Instead, start small. So, you want to pick a space not as a big project where you're making all of this time in your schedule. Instead, you're going to look at your schedule and be like, okay, how much time do I actually have? I have 2 hours. You want to tackle a space you know you can start and finish in that amount of time. Okay, so society might be telling you to tackle this massive project so that you come out the other side feeling all good and you've got it all done. But I implore you to start small. When you start small, you build momentum. You learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You have these steps that you can follow. So that's part of the online course, Home Organizing for Beginners. I teach you all of the steps to go through for every home organizing project that you're tackling, big or small, right? But I implore you to start small. Mistake number 3, you start with how you want it to look. This is super common and this is one of the bigger offenders, but there are 2 others that are even bigger and those are coming yet. But instead of starting with how you want it to look, because what happens then is you go out and you buy these really cute looking baskets. You're thinking about decor, you're thinking about the things you want to hang on the walls, you're thinking about, and I'm looking at my own wall right now, maybe what color paint you want to put on the wall. But these things aren't helping you get organized, and they're certainly not helping you stay organized. If you're starting with a trip to Target and you're looking at these really cute containers, that's great. But number one, you don't even know if the containers are going to fit the space that you have to put it in. Number two, what are you even putting in it? You don't know the answers to these questions yet. Instead, you want to focus on the function. So, in mistake number 1, you learned that you need to incorporate other people. You need to understand how the space is being used. I call that focus on the function. When you're focusing on the function, you're understanding how people are using the space. You're understanding how you are using the space. You're thinking about, in the heat of the moment, what am I going to do? So if you're organizing, let's say your desk, and you have your stapler, you have a 3-hole punch, you have a bunch of these small tools that you use in your office, and you're like, yeah, I don't really have a desk drawer. I'm going to put these in the bin. But in the heat of the moment, how are you really going to use them? Are you going to open the bin up, like you have a cover on the bin? You're going to open it up. You're going to take the stapler out, use the stapler. Are you actually going to put it back into the bin, or are you going to leave it laying on top of your desk? Does that make sense? That's how you focus on the function. What are you actually really going to do? So mistake number 4, once it's organized, you think you're done. So this is one of the most common things because you go through the decluttering process and then you get things put in place where you want them. It looks the way you want it to look and you feel so good. However, if you do not put measures in place to keep it that way, it's going to fall apart. You're going to be back on the hamster wheel of home organizing. That just means that you're organizing the same spaces over and over and over again. I don't want you there. I was there. I was on that hamster wheel, and you do not want to be there. Instead of organizing it and feeling like you're done, you're going to use documentation to stay organized. Remember, we talked about having other people help. You want to know how they're using the space. We just talked about focusing on the function over the fashion because in the heat of the moment, what are you really going to do? When you use documentation to stay organized, you're listing out what you expect of yourself and others within the space. You're maybe writing up work instructions. So when you go through the process of cleaning the space, how do you want it cleaned? How do you want it to be kept organized? I always like to use the example of our laundry room. When I would have the kids clean up, because it's inevitable, they peel off their dirty socks or whatever is laying on the floor in the living room, and they would pick up the socks, which I'm thankful for, but then they would throw them in the laundry room in front of the laundry basket. So honestly, I had to put an expectation in place and I documented it. I posted it on the wall for a while until they got in the habit of putting it into the basket. But my expectation was to put the dirty clothes into the laundry basket. That's an expectation of the area that you've organized. Okay, does that make sense? Use documentation to stay organized. Mistake number 5 is the biggest offender. You listen to what society tells you. There's just so much wrapped up in this. You listen to minimalism suggestions. You listen to your mudroom needs to look this certain way, or you read somewhere that you should only touch things one time so that you're not doubling up on the amount of time it takes to manage something. Like paperwork is a good example. Okay, so listening to what society tells us really is a downfall because society doesn't know you. They don't know me. They don't know our family. So instead of listening to what society tells you, lean into what comes naturally. Think about what works for you in your current season of life. This is going to work for you because when you consider what works for you right now in your current season of life, you can shift over time. So as your kids get older and their shoes get bigger, sure, the way you store their shoes is going to have to change, but you don't have to worry about that today. Maybe you're able to put them all in a little bin right now, but in the future, maybe your bin just grows, or maybe you change it altogether, but you're focusing on one small area and you're really thinking about what works for you, your family, and your season of life. So I hope all of these make sense. I really want you to lean into what comes naturally for you. Focus on the functionality. Don't shy away from documentation. Be sure to start small so that you can build momentum and keep improving over time and into different areas of your home. And be sure to incorporate anybody who uses the area that you are organizing. That's what I have for you today. If today's episode hit home with you, I would love to know about it. Would you be open to leaving me a 5-star review? That's how other people find this podcast and get help the way that you're getting help right now. Thanks so much. Have a fun and productive weekend. I'll be back here next week sharing tangible and simple instructions about home organizing, cleaning, and time management. I'll see you then.